You'll never get that UN position now. My mother-in-law's voice crackled through the phone, dripping with satisfaction. I just spoke to Marcus on the committee, told him all about your unstable behavior and how you're a security risk. Good luck explaining that away. My name is Alexandra Santos, and at 32, I'd spent the last decade building my career in international humanitarian law. The United Nations position I'd been shortlisted for would have put me at the forefront of refugee advocacy, a dream I'd worked towards since law school. But standing in my Geneva apartment, listening to Diana Porter gloat about sabotaging my career, I felt a strange sense of calm. Thank you for letting me know. I reply evenly, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through my veins. That's it. Diana scoffed. No begging? No tears? James was right. You really are cold. I thought about my husband, who was currently away on a medical mission in Sudan. James had always stood by me, even when his mother's interference in our lives became increasingly aggressive. But this time, Diana had gone too far. Actually, I said, glancing at my laptop screen where my email inbox was open, I appreciate you telling me about your conversation with Marcus. It makes things much simpler. Simpler? Diana's voice wavered slightly. What do you mean? Goodbye, Diana. I ended the call and turned my attention to the email I'd received just minutes before her call. The one she didn't know about. From International Committee Review Board. Subject: Complaint Investigation. Position code UNHRL 2025. The timing was almost poetic. Diana had no idea that Marcus, her old family friend on the committee, had already flagged her interference. Her attempt to sabotage my application had triggered an automatic ethics review. My phone buzzed with texts from Diana. You can't ignore me. I'm only trying to protect the UN from someone like you. James will hear about this. I forwarded the messages to my secure email, adding them to the growing file of Diana's documented interference in my career. This wasn't the first time she tried to derail my professional life, but I was determined it would be the last. 3 years ago, when I first met James at a medical conference in Brussels, Diana had seemed supportive. She'd bragged to her friends about her son dating an international lawyer, posted proud photos on social media about her brilliant daughter-in-law. But things changed after the wedding. My dedication to refugee advocacy meant frequent travel, something Diana deemed selfish and unfair to James. She began showing up unannounced at our apartment when I was away, calling James constantly with manufactured emergencies, and making snide comments about how real wives prioritize family over career. James understood my passion because he shared it. His work as a trauma surgeon with Doctors Without Borders meant he too was often away. We made our unconventional marriage work through trust, understanding, and complete support of each other's missions. Diana never accepted this. My computer pinged with another email. From Dr. Amara Patel. Subject: Incident Report, Diana Porter. Dr. Patel was the head of the UN's Ethics Committee, and I'd worked with her previously on cases involving interference in diplomatic appointments. Her response was swift and clear. Alexandra, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Mrs. Porter's actions constitute a serious breach of our selection process protocols. We'll need your full documentation of previous incidents. The committee will convene tomorrow at 9 a.m. Geneva time. I opened my secure drive and began organizing the evidence I'd been collecting. Recordings of Diana's threatening voicemails, screenshots of her emails to my previous employers, documentation of her attempts to access my professional records. I'd learned early in my legal career to keep meticulous records, a habit that was about to pay off. My phone rang again. James this time. I took a deep breath before answering. Alex? His voice was tired but warm. Mom just called me in hysterics, saying you're trying to ruin her reputation. What's going on? I explained everything. Diana's call, her interference with the UN position, the ethics review. James was silent for a long moment. I'm so sorry, he finally said. I knew she was having trouble accepting our lifestyle, but this is unforgivable. What do you need from me? Just your support, I replied, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease. The ethics committee will handle the rest. You have it, always. He paused. I can try to get emergency leave. No, I said firmly. Your patients need you. I can handle your mother. After we hung up, I sat at my desk looking out over Lake Geneva. The lights of the UN headquarters glittered in the distance, a reminder of everything I'd worked for. Diana thought she could use her connections to destroy my career, but she underestimated both my preparation and my determination. My laptop pinged again. Another email from Dr. Patel. Emergency Ethics Committee session scheduled for tomorrow morning. Mrs. Porter has been formally notified. Given her claims of personal connection to committee member Marcus Chen, we've escalated this to the Secretary General's office. I allowed myself a small smile. Diana had no idea that Marcus Chen, her supposed old friend on the committee, had been one of my strongest advocates during the application process. He'd recognized my work in refugee camps across Syria and Yemen, and he'd been the one to recommend me for the position. My phone buzzed one last time, another text from Diana. You've made a terrible mistake. I have friends in high places. I didn't bother responding. Tomorrow, Diana would learn exactly what happens when you try to manipulate a system designed to protect against exactly this kind of interference. As I prepared my documentation for the morning's meeting, I felt surprisingly peaceful. Sometimes the best response to manipulation isn't anger or revenge, it's simply letting the truth come to light. The sunrise over Lake Geneva would bring more than just a new day. It would bring accountability, and with it, the end of Diana's interference in my life and career. The UN Ethics Committee conference room was imposingly silent as Dr. Pato reviewed the evidence displayed on the large screen. Diana sat across the table, her usually perfect composure cracking as each piece of documentation appeared. Emails, voice messages, surveillance footage of her attempting to enter secure areas using James's medical credentials. Mrs. Porter, Dr. Patel's voice cut through the silence. Would you care to explain why you accessed the UN's secure database using your son's medical clearance card? Diana's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her designer scarf. I was simply concerned about the security of the organization. As a mother, Dr. Patel interrupted, you committed multiple violations of international security protocols. This goes far beyond family concern, Mrs. Porter. I sat quietly, watching the scene unfold. Marcus Chen, the committee member Diana had claimed as her ally, looked at her with unveiled disappointment. Diana, I've known your family for years. Why would you fabricate stories about our relationship to interfere with a UN appointment? Diana's face flushed. I never fabricated anything. We met at the Geneva Gala 3 years ago. You said. I said it was nice to meet you, Marcus cut in. That single interaction hardly justifies claiming intimate knowledge of UN committee decisions or using my name to threaten candidates. The evidence continued to mount. Security footage showed Diana attempting to access my office at the Geneva headquarters. Records revealed her multiple calls to different department heads, each time claiming different connections or emergencies to get information about my application. Miss Santos. Dr. Patel turned to me. How long has this interference been occurring? I opened my laptop, pulling up a meticulously organized timeline. The documented incidents began 3 years ago, shortly after my marriage to James Porter. However, the intensity escalated significantly after my UN position shortlisting. Diana's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat as I presented each incident, her attempts to contact my former colleagues at humanitarian organizations, her false complaints to ethics boards, her orchestrated concerns about my mental stability. This is ridiculous, Diana burst out. I was protecting the UN from someone who clearly puts career above family. She's never home, she's always in some war zone or refugee camp. What kind of wife? Mrs. Porter, Dr. Patel's voice was sharp. We are not here to judge Miss Santos' personal life. We are here because you attempted to manipulate a United Nations appointment process through fraudulent means. The door opened, and James walked in. I hadn't expected him to make it. He was supposed to be in Sudan for another week. Diana's face lit up with hope. James, finally, you can explain how difficult Alexandra has made our family life. No, Mom. James's voice was tired but firm as he sat beside me. I'm here to support my wife and to formally distance myself from your actions. What you've done isn't just wrong, it's criminal. Diana's face crumpled. But I did it for you. She's never there for you, always running off to dangerous places. Like I do, James challenged. Or have you forgotten that I spend months at a time in conflict zones too? Alex and I support each other's missions. We always have. The only person creating problems in our family is you." The committee members exchanged glances as Diana's facade finally cracked. Tears streaked her perfectly applied makeup as she realized her son wasn't going to rescue her this time. Dr. Patel cleared her throat. "Given the severity of these violations, the committee will need to deliberate. We'll reconvene in 1 hour." As we filed out of the conference room, I felt James's hand slip into mine. "I caught the first flight I could," he whispered. "Couldn't let you face this alone." We found a quiet corner in the building's cafe, away from Diana's tearful protests to her lawyer. James looked exhausted but determined. "I had no idea how far she'd gone," he said, running a hand through his hair. "All those times she complained about you being away, she was actually trying to sabotage your work." I squeezed his hand. "It's not your fault. Your mother made her own choices." "Did you know," he said with a slight smile, "that Marcus Chen actually reached out to me last month? He wanted to tell me how proud the committee was to have someone with your experience joining them. He had no idea my mother was claiming to be his close friend." The hour passed quickly, and soon we were back in the conference room. Diana looked smaller somehow, her earlier confidence replaced by nervous fidgeting. Dr. Patel addressed the room with practiced authority. "The committee has reached several decisions. First, regarding the UN position. Ms. Santos' appointment will proceed as planned with additional security measures in place." I felt James squeeze my hand under the table as Dr. Patel continued. "Second, Mrs. Porter's actions constitute serious violations of UN security protocols. We are referring this matter to appropriate legal authorities. Additionally, she will be permanently banned from all UN facilities and events." Diana's lawyer whispered something to her, but she seemed beyond hearing it. Her carefully constructed world of social influence and manipulation was crumbling around her. Finally, Dr. Patel concluded, "Given Mrs. Porter's claims about committee relationships, we are launching a full review of any appointments she may have attempted to influence in the past." As the meeting adjourned, Diana made one last attempt to approach us. "James, please, you can't let them do this to your own mother." James stood firm, his arm around my waist. "You did this to yourself, Mom. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." We watched as Diana was escorted out by security, her proud shoulders finally slumped in defeat. The woman who had spent years trying to control and manipulate everything around her had finally lost all control. Marcus Chen approached us as the room cleared. "Alexandra, I want you to know that your appointment was based solely on your exceptional qualifications. Nothing your mother-in-law did could have changed that." As we left the UN building, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Lake Geneva. James looked at me with concern. "Are you okay?" I thought about the years of subtle undermining, the constant criticism, the attempts to drive a wedge between us. "You know what? I actually am. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe." "Good," he smiled. "Because I hear the refugee camp in Sudan could use a brilliant humanitarian lawyer. Know anyone who might be interested?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months, only if they don't mind working alongside a dedicated trauma surgeon. The truth had finally come to light, and with it, the freedom to continue the work we both believed in, without interference, without manipulation, and without Diana's shadow hanging over us. 5 years after Diana's dramatic downfall at the UN headquarters, I stood at a podium in New York, addressing the General Assembly about our new refugee protection initiative. The program, which combined medical care with legal advocacy, had already helped thousands of displaced families across 3 continents. Looking out at the sea of faces, I spotted James in the audience, now the head of international medical response for our joint program. Next to him sat our 3-year-old daughter Sophia, adopted from one of the Syrian refugee camps we'd worked in. She was drawing quietly, probably another picture of what she called our helping people work. Life had changed dramatically since that day in Geneva. Diana's actions had triggered more than just personal consequences. Her case had led to a complete overhaul of UN security protocols and vetting processes. The Porter Protocols, as they became known in diplomatic circles, now protected humanitarian appointments from external interference. After the Ethics Committee's decision, Diana had retreated to her country house in France. Her social circle, once vast and influential, had shrunk considerably after the scandal. The last we'd heard, she'd started volunteering at a local homeless shelter, perhaps finding redemption in actually helping others instead of just claiming social prominence. The success of our integrated approach, I continued in my speech, proves that when we combine medical care with legal protection, we create lasting change for displaced communities. As I stepped down from the podium, the applause was interrupted by Sophia's clear voice. "That's my mama," causing ripples of warm laughter through the assembly. James scooped her up, making his way toward me through the crowd of diplomats and humanitarian workers. "Brilliant as always," he whispered, kissing my cheek. Sophia reached for me, her small hands patting my face. "Mama, can we go see the big globe now?" she asked, referring to the iconic sculpture in the UN Plaza. It had become our post-speech tradition. As we walked through the building, I received a surprising message from Marcus Chen, who had become a mentor over the years. "Diana reached out to me today. She's been following your work from afar. She asked if she could send Sophia a birthday gift. I told her I'd check with you first." I showed the message to James, who sighed thoughtfully. "What do you think?" We sat on a bench near the globe, watching Sophia trace the continents with her tiny fingers. The past 5 years had taught us a lot about forgiveness and growth. "Maybe," I said slowly, "it's time to open a small door." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. People can change. Mom's quarterly reports from the shelter show she's been consistently volunteering for 3 years now. No drama, no social media posts, just quiet service. The next week, a package arrived at our New York apartment. Inside was a handmade quilt, each square depicting a different country where we'd worked. A note fell from the wrapping. "Dear Sophia, I've watched from afar as your parents help make the world better. Each square represents a place where they've brought hope to others. I hope one day you'll understand the incredible legacy you're part of. With love, your grandmother." The gift was thoughtful, personal, and most importantly, came with no demands or manipulations. It was, perhaps, the first genuine gesture we'd seen from Diana in years. That evening, as Sophia slept under her new quilt, James and I sat on our balcony overlooking the city lights. The shelter coordinator called. James said quietly, "Mom started a legal aid program for their residents. She's using her social connections to help people find jobs and housing." I smiled, thinking about how life's greatest lessons often come from unexpected places. She's finally understood what real influence means. Our phones buzzed simultaneously. An emergency alert from a refugee camp in Lebanon. Medical crisis, legal complications, families in need of immediate assistance. "I'll book the flights," James said, already reaching for his laptop. "I'll call the team," I added, sending quick messages to our coordination unit. As we prepare for another mission, I glanced at Sophia's peaceful form under the quilt of many nations. Diana had been right about one thing: we were creating a legacy, but not the one she'd originally envisioned of social status and controlled appearances. Instead, it was a legacy of service, of using our skills to make real change in the world. The next morning, as we explained to Sophia that we had to go help more families, she simply nodded with the wisdom only children possess. "Like the pictures on my blanket," she said. "Helping people everywhere." Our nanny, Maria, who'd become family over the years, arrived to stay with Sophia. As we headed to the airport, I sent a brief message to Diana. "Sophia loves the quilt. Thank you for understanding what really matters." Her reply was simple: "Safe travels. The world needs you both." 5 years ago, I'd stood in a Geneva apartment, listening to Diana threaten my career. Now, I was boarding a plane with my husband, heading to help more families, our daughters safe under a quilt that told our story. Sometimes the happy endings aren't what we expect, they're better. Life had taught us that true success isn't measured by social status or control, but by the lives we touch and the changes we make. Diana's interference had tried to stop this journey, but instead it had only made our purpose clearer. As our plane took off to Lebanon, I thought about how far we'd all come. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't in defeating others, but in helping them find a better way forward.